They say politics is a game of power. But lately, it feels more like a game of truth and illusion. And somewhere between those two, the world just witnessed something no one expected. For weeks, trade tensions between Washington and Ottawa have been quietly simmering. Statements from both sides sounded diplomatic on the surface, but behind those smiles, there's been a growing sense of something far more serious. A brewing confrontation that finally exploded in front of world leaders. It all started with what seemed like another typical Trump speech. Bold claims, familiar rhetoric, and the same promise that America was winning again. He spoke of massive trade deficits, of Canada taking advantage of the United States, and of secret deals that he said were rigged from the start. But this time, he went too far. Because within hours, Prime Minister Mark Carney's response changed everything. Not through outrage, not through grandstanding, but with something far more devastating: precision. Calm, deliberate precision that stripped away the entire narrative Trump had built around trade. Now, before I tell you what he said, you need to understand the context. Over the last few months, new data from international financial institutions began circulating quietly, data that challenged the numbers Trump had been quoting for years. But none of it ever reached the public. At least, not until now. Carney didn't leak it. He didn't need to. He waited until the right moment. Until every camera, every journalist, and every world leader's eyes were focused on that stage. Then, in a few carefully chosen sentences, he dismantled the very foundation of Trump's trade story. He mentioned discrepancies, unaccounted figures, missing export data, and what he called phantom deficits. The phrase itself sent reporters scrambling. Because if what he implied was true, it meant the entire U.S. trade deficit with Canada was based on numbers that never existed. The room went silent. Trump's expression froze for just a moment, brief, but visible. Carney didn't stop there. He went on to question the structural narrative that had been used to justify recent tariff hikes, tariffs that have shaken both economies and sent shockwaves through global markets. He didn't accuse anyone by name, but everyone knew who he was talking about. And then came the line that no one saw coming, the one that reportedly sent Washington into damage control. Carney said, "When leadership depends on false numbers, truth becomes the first casualty." That was it. No shouting, no theatrics, just quiet devastation. But here's where things get strange. Within hours, a document began circulating online, an internal trade assessment allegedly from the U.S. Department of Commerce. The document, if real, appears to show that American officials had warned months earlier that the deficit figures with Canada were inaccurate due to outdated data models. The document was marked confidential. Now, nobody has confirmed it. No one has verified where it came from. But its timing was impossible to ignore. Some analysts believe the leak wasn't accidental. They say it might have been part of a quiet rebellion inside Washington. Officials tired of the political spin, choosing to expose the truth just when it would hurt most. Others say it's pure coincidence, or worse, a planted story meant to discredit Trump's critics. But regardless of where it came from, the result was the same. Trump's trade narrative was under fire, and Carney's words had set the blaze. By the next morning, headlines around the world were asking the same question. Had the U.S. president been caught misleading his own people about the state of American trade? But Trump's team fought back aggressively. They dismissed Carney's remarks as economic showboating, claiming Canada was using selective data to manipulate global opinion. Yet, the damage was already done. Investors were spooked, allies were uneasy, and behind closed doors, sources say the atmosphere in Washington turned combustive. Carney, meanwhile, stayed silent. Not a single follow-up comment. Not a single post. Silence, the kind that makes everyone else talk louder. Then came something even more unexpected. Late one night, a senior White House advisor reportedly resigned without warning. No reason given. Just a brief statement about ethical differences. Within hours, speculation exploded that it had something to do with the trade scandal, that the advisor may have been connected to those leaked documents. Again, no confirmation. But the dots people were connecting painted a dramatic picture. Some insiders in Ottawa claim Carney's office received quiet calls from U.S. officials, not to apologize, but to clarify misunderstandings. That phrase alone raised eyebrows, because it suggested Washington was suddenly unsure of its own numbers. And then, as if on cue, New data from the International Trade Secretariat was published showing Canada's exports to the U.S. had been underreported for 2 consecutive quarters. The timing was uncanny, too perfect to ignore. Trump's public reaction was predictable. He doubled down. In a fiery statement, he accused Canada of economic manipulation, claiming that foreign bureaucrats were rewriting facts to make the U.S. look weak. But this time, fewer people seemed convinced. Even some of his own party allies appeared hesitant to defend him outright. Meanwhile, Carney's approval ratings surged. He didn't boast. He didn't celebrate. Instead, he released a short, almost cryptic message. Facts speak louder than politics. That message spread like wildfire across social media, especially in Europe and Asia, where leaders have been quietly questioning Washington's trade credibility for months. Suddenly, Carney was being called a technocrat turned truth-teller, and Trump's credibility on global trade was hanging by a thread. But here's where things take an even darker turn. Reports began emerging of data revisions being ordered inside U.S. trade offices, internal audits, emergency reviews, and what some described as panic mode. Unverified, of course, but the whispers grew too loud to ignore. Could it be that Carney's calm precision had forced an entire government to recheck its own books? Could a few quiet sentences have done what years of diplomacy couldn't, exposing a lie that had been hiding in plain sight? No one's saying that publicly. But behind the scenes, insiders hint at growing divisions in Washington. Economic advisors split between defending the numbers and quietly rewriting them. So, was Trump humiliated? Maybe, but not in the way people expected. Not with shouting or confrontation, but with quiet exposure. The kind that lingers. The kind that rewrites reputations slowly, one headline at a time. And while Washington tries to spin, deny, and distract, Ottawa has done the one thing no one saw coming. Nothing. Absolute silence. No press conferences. No back and forth. Just facts, left hanging in the air like smoke after an explosion. The world is watching now, and in politics, perception is everything. Carney didn't just challenge Trump's trade claims. He challenged his authority. And once that's questioned, even slightly, it's almost impossible to rebuild. No matter what happens next, this moment will be remembered as the point when the illusion cracked, when a calm Canadian economist quietly cornered the most powerful man in the world and made him blink. And as the dust settles, one question keeps echoing across capitals. If the trade numbers were wrong, what else was? The answer to that, whatever it turns out to be, could reshape global politics for years to come.